So many people think about AI and they think killer robots. They think Arnold Schwarzenegger or RoboCop roaming the streets. And that's not the way it has to be. In fact, that would be very difficult to achieve in practice. What we're probably looking at in the near term is an interface of man and machine, where you have people doing the things that they do best, and machines doing the things that they do best. And then the total is more than the sum of the parts. We have a blind spot now. So our blind spot is that militaries, states are really focused on how can these weapons be more effective on the battlefield. They're not thinking about how can they be used to reduce the effect on civilians, how they can reduce the humanitarian impact of war. But we've learned over time, it's consistent with our principles, but it's also a strategic, smart thing to do to be paying attention to these things. AI can be used for good in the waging of war, just as in medicine. But it needs states to be deliberate. So instead of just focusing on effectiveness, we can also consider how AI can be used for humanitarian benefits in war and ease the tragedies of war. So for example, you may have been watching an area, you didn't see any cars moving around, you didn't see any pedestrians on the street, so you go, the risk of civilian casualties is very low. Then you call an aircraft, time goes by, there may be people walking around in the area that you're just not necessarily tracking anymore. So that's just one example. Another example of a big area of impact is what some people call reverberating effects, and that's the effects on the population by losing power, losing water. Those things can cause huge secondary effects. And we have a very hard time anticipating those things. We're pretty good at looking for civilian casualties. We're not so good at looking at these secondary effects that can actually be huge for the health of a population. So CNA has been doing a lot in this space. We've been looking at both ethical issues and legal issues, but also operational issues and policy issues regarding lethal autonomy, and thinking about ways to promote the safety of AI-enabled systems. And that's not just, a lot of people talk about these systems complying with international law, like international humanitarian law, which is very important. But what we've seen in our own work is that if your concern is civilian casualties, then that is necessary but not sufficient. There are more things you can do besides just complying with the law to make systems safe. And so we're looking at ways not only to comply with the law, but also make them safer.